Alright everyone, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video here along US-95 along the first 60 miles here in the gem state of Idaho. So the first 20 miles are arguably one of the more scenic stretches of US-95 here in southern Idaho as it passes through the Owyhee Mountains here as we just enter Idaho from Oregon. And then we descend down into the Snake River Plain there just southwest of the greater Boise area. So as I mentioned in the video, Boise is basically used as the control city for US-95 from northern Nevada and for the most part going through Oregon as well, and then even up into Idaho here. But it can be just a little bit misleading because US-95 takes you in the direction that you need to go to get to Boise, but it actually doesn't really go to Boise. In fact, it actually kind of bypasses the entirety of the Boise metropolitan area there just to the west and basically runs parallel along the Snake River there near the Idaho-Oregon border for roughly the first 80 miles that it spends here in Idaho. And while the scenery there once we get to the greater Treasure Valley or Snake River Plain may not be as good as the first 20 miles here, but let me tell you from experience that the drive along US-95 in Idaho is only going to get more amazing the farther north that we go here in the state. And basically US-95 is really the only road in Idaho that goes from the southern part of the state all the way up to the northern part of the state and basically connects the rest of the state up towards the Idaho Panhandle up there, which we will see here in the next series of videos that will be coming here on my channel here along US-95. And one thing I will say is that driving through the Snake River Plain there along the western edge of the greater Boise area just really reminded me of where I live back here in California in the Central Valley. There's a lot of similarities between the Snake River Plain and the California Central Valley in terms of geography and topography. Although the Snake River Plain is a lot higher in elevation than the Central Valley, mostly sitting about 2,000 to 5,000 feet above sea level, depending on where you're at there in the Snake River Plain. Of course, the Boise area is near the southernmost and lowest point of the Snake River Plain there, and then as you go farther east the elevation increases and everything like that. But yeah, just seeing all the farm fields and like the cornfields and everything like there just really reminded me of home and honestly made me really feel like I was home back in my area of California here where I live, of course, having very similar scenery and just everything like that. But yeah, this view right here as you crest this unnamed summit here as you're descending down into the greater Treasure Valley, Snake River Plain here, and then you just get the awesome views looking out towards the greater Boise area, and then of course the mountains off in the distance, and then if you're looking in the opposite direction you get really nice views of the Owyhee Mountains here as well. It's just a really cool area and it's just really a dramatic way to really enter the greater Idaho and greater Boise area here as well, and the views are just really spectacular here from this viewpoint as we descend down into the Treasure Valley. So yeah, just let me know what you guys think of this little introduction to Idaho here along US-95, and trust me when I say that the views and the scenery is only going to get better the farther north we head here in Idaho along US Route 95, and I'm sure you guys will be very much looking forward to that here as we continue our series on US-95 that began all the way down there at the Mexican border down there in San Luis, Arizona, if you can believe it or not. Alright everyone, I just want to give a shout out to all my social media accounts that you see on the screen here because I really am trying to grow my social media accounts beyond just here on YouTube. I would really appreciate it if you guys would check out my Instagram. I'm really trying to grow that social media platform, so I would really appreciate it if you guys would follow me on there. My username is just InterstateKyle. What's really cool about my Instagram is if I'm on a road trip, I will post on my story of where I am and what I'm doing, so it's just a really cool way for you guys to follow along with me in real time to see what I'm doing and what I'm up to. I know my videos on here can get pretty dated very quickly, so if you guys want to see what I'm doing in real time, I highly recommend checking out my Instagram and I would really appreciate your support over there. You guys can also check out my Facebook group and my Twitter/X account. The links to all those are down in the description. Another thing I want to give a shout out to is my Patreon, which is a way for you guys to support me beyond YouTube here. If you guys want to join my Patreon, you guys can get special perks for joining, like watching all of my videos early before they are released here on YouTube. And all the money I make on there goes right back into this YouTube channel to keep producing more of these types of videos in the future. The link to my Patreon is also down in the description, so if you really want to check it out, I would really appreciate your extra support over there as well. And another thing that is set up on my channel is Super Thanks, which is located to the right of where you would normally like one of my videos. What that basically is just a way for you guys to tip me out for each video going forward if you feel that I've earned it, of course. And then all the money on there also goes right back to this channel to keep producing more of these types of videos in the future. And with all that said, folks, I really hope you all enjoyed watching this video here along the first 60 miles of US 95 in Idaho. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you all have an amazing day, and take care, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to the next adventure, and we will see you next time.